Hello and welcome to our channel. Today, we're going to talk about the top 10 foods that destroy your liver. This also includes some of most commonly used foods. Let's start with refined carbohydrates, which include things like white rice and white flour used to make white bread. Refined means something has been taken away from them. When they take something away, they often add a little back and call it enriching the food. To put it in perspective, it's like taking away $1 and then adding back a penny. That's what enriched foods are. And that's why refined foods and refined carbs are things you should reduce or avoid. Refined carbs can also include things like fruit juice. The whole fruit is a whole food. But when you turn it into fruit juice, you strip away a lot of the beneficial elements, making the sugar completely available for fast absorption. Other examples include crackers and rice cakes. Even if whole grain is used to make rice cakes, they've been altered. The surface area has been changed, which allows for faster access to the sugar in those carbohydrates. This is significant for liver disease because most liver diseases are caused by metabolic problems, such as blood sugar issues, insulin resistance, and type 2 diabetes. So, let's take a moment to understand what carbohydrates are and why we're discussing them. A carbohydrate is a glucose molecule, the most basic form. This is the exact molecule that ends up in the bloodstream as blood glucose, which every cell in your body can use, and every animal on Earth can use as well. When we talk about carbohydrates, some people refer to rice, wheat, and grains as complex carbohydrates, and they suggest that these are good and should be eaten in large quantities. But all that means is that we string these glucose molecules together in chains of hundreds, thousands, or tens of thousands of molecules, creating starch. It's not really that complex, because it only takes a few seconds to break these connections, turning them back into free glucose molecules that can enter the bloodstream very quickly. What happens when we raise blood sugar? We also raise insulin. Eating these foods regularly leads to chronically elevated insulin levels. High insulin promotes lipogenesis, or fat formation, turning the excess carbohydrates into fat because that's the body's way of storing it. Some of this fat is stored in the liver, contributing to fatty liver disease, known as non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. Another way that refining foods damages the body is by depleting them of vital nutrients. When we process food and break it down into energy, we need vitamins and minerals that were originally present. But when we remove these nutrients, the body suffers, and the liver, in particular, is affected. Number 2 on the list, sugar. Sugar is a specific type of carbohydrate that's worse than just starch. It's sometimes referred to as white sugar, brown sugar, sucrose, high fructose corn syrup, or agave, but it's essentially the same. What's different from starch is that sugar contains both glucose and fructose. While glucose can be used by every cell in your body, fructose can only be processed by the liver. The presence of both glucose and fructose creates two mechanisms of damage. First, as with starch, glucose raises blood sugar and insulin, leading to insulin resistance and fat storage, some of which occurs in the liver. The second mechanism comes from the fructose. Since only the liver processes fructose, consuming large amounts overwhelms the liver. If we only had a teaspoon now and then, we'd be fine. But when we consume massive amounts of sugar, which contains about 50% fructose, the liver is overwhelmed, leading to fatty liver much faster than with starch alone. These two factors drive metabolic syndrome, also known as Syndrome X, which causes metabolic diseases like cardiovascular disease, increased blood pressure, which raises the risk of stroke, visceral fat, and type 2 diabetes. Around 55 to 70% of people with type 2 diabetes also have fatty liver. I also want to mention saturated fat and clarify a few things because it's often blamed for fatty liver disease. However, upon closer examination, It's not necessarily a positive or negative factor on its own. People with diabetes often consume a lot of saturated fat because they don't take good care of themselves. However, saturated fat is not the root cause of liver disease. Eating excessively of one thing is never a good idea. Long-term consumption of only saturated fat would unbalance your nutrition. A balanced diet, including grass-fed beef, butter, olive oil, nuts, seeds, and avocado, is optimal. The saturated fats in grass-fed beef and butter are healthy when the animals are raised well, and these fats are stable and don't easily oxidize. Number 3 on the list, popular drinks. Most people know that soft drinks or soda are full of sugar, with one can containing about 40 grams. Larger servings, like in restaurants or bigger bottles, can contain up to 70 grams. But there are other drinks that people don't often associate with being as bad as soft drinks. Coffee drinks, for example, can have 50 to 70 grams of sugar, and many people treat them like candy without realizing how much sugar they contain. Similarly, energy drinks, iced tea, and even flavored waters like vitamin water can pack in 20 to 30 grams of sugar per serving. Even milkshakes can contain 50 to 90 grams of sugar. Some healthy-sounding drinks, like coconut water, may have 8 to 10 grams per serving or more, and some are sweetened with as much as 50 grams of sugar. Because many people don't realize how much sugar they're consuming through these drinks. The US guidelines recommend that 10% of your calories come from added sugar, which is about 50 grams. Ideally, your daily intake should be 0 to 20 grams, or about 4 teaspoons, which means just a little honey in your coffee or a small amount of sweetener, but not adding massive amounts of sugar to your food and drinks. Number 4 on the list, alcohol. Alcohol is one of the 2 substances that only the liver can break down in significant amounts. Fructose is the other. While most people know alcohol is bad for you, it's not necessarily harmful in moderation. However, some drinks, like mixed drinks, contain large amounts of sugar, and drinking several at a time can overload the liver with both alcohol and sugar. Liqueurs, sweet wines, and cocktails like daiquiris and margaritas combine alcohol with high levels of sugar. Beer has alcohol, but no sugar, though it's high in other carbohydrates. The least harmful options are dry wines and distilled liquors like vodka, gin, whiskey, and bourbon. Number 5 on the list, vegetable oil. We're often told that vegetables are healthy, so vegetable oils must be good too. But when you look at the labels, you'll see that most vegetable oils are made from soybeans, canola, rapeseed, safflower, sunflower, or corn, none of which are vegetables. The oils extracted from these sources often have unhealthy omega-6 to omega-3 ratios, with some as high as 20:1, which promotes inflammation. These oils are also processed with high heat, pressure, and chemicals, resulting in an oil that is nutritionally depleted. In the end, these oils are almost as unhealthy as plastic. Number 6 is fried food. We've all heard how bad fried food is, but the main reason people give is that it has too many calories. That's not the real reason. The real issue is that frying begins with the same vegetable oils we just discussed. But in addition to that, these oils are reused. They don't just pour a fresh batch to make French fries or shrimp and then discard the oil. No, they use it all day long. Each time the oil is reused, it becomes more oxidized due to the extended high heat, which leads to more damaged molecules and rancid fats. Additionally, some of the food you're frying will leave residues in the oil, little traces of proteins and food particles that get burned as the oil sits there all day. This makes the oil more toxic. All of these toxins are things the liver must detoxify and clear out, because that's essentially what the liver does. Number 7 is margarine and shortening. These are further processed versions of the already harmful vegetable oils. By applying additional pressure, heat, and hydrogen, we change the molecular structure of the oils. With vegetable oil and frying, these changes happen somewhat accidentally, but in this case, they're done on purpose. The goal is to turn the liquid oil into something solid, making it more shelf-stable and more suitable for baking, since shortening creates a crispier, crunchier texture. The problem is that these oils, originally derived from somewhat healthy legumes or seeds, are transformed into unnatural products. This process creates trans fats, which don't occur naturally and cannot be broken down easily by our body. Once in the body, trans fats are difficult to eliminate, unlike natural fats found in real food. You can tell if a product contains trans fats by checking for partially hydrogenated oils like soybean oil, corn oil, or safflower oil on the label. Although some manufacturers have moved to fully hydrogenating oils to avoid trans fats, it's not an exact science. Some oils may still contain traces of partially hydrogenated fats. But when we have delicious, natural options like butter or extra virgin olive oil, why would we opt for a processed, molecularly altered food? Number 8 is processed food. When you go to the supermarket, the fresh, whole foods are usually found around the perimeter, while the processed foods are in the middle. There are a few hundred, maybe a couple thousand, natural foods available, but there are up to 50,000 processed food items. These packaged, shelf-stable foods last for a long time, but that shelf stability comes at a cost. To make them last, manufacturers use harmful ingredients like white flour, sugar, high fructose corn syrup, and vegetable oils. Now that you understand why these ingredients are bad for you, combining them into one product makes things even worse. Processed foods often contain hydrogenated oils, which contribute trans fats. They also require preservatives, chemicals that prevent spoilage, and artificial flavors and colors to compensate for the loss of natural flavor. These foods are nutrient deficient, as they've had everything that could spoil removed, usually the nutrients. This puts extra strain on the liver, which is a highly active organ that metabolizes and detoxifies substances. It uses enzymes, which rely on B vitamins, such as B2, B3, B6, B9, and B12, antioxidants like vitamins A, C, and E, and cruciferous vegetables to neutralize toxins. In phase 1 of detox, the liver neutralizes toxins, but they remain fat-soluble. In phase 2, the liver combines toxins with water-soluble substances to flush them out. If you're eating junk food, you're not only clogging your liver with fat, but you're also depriving it of the nutrients it needs to cleanse itself, which hinders its ability to detoxify your body. Number 9 is fast food. While fast food may seem convenient and inexpensive, what makes it fast and cheap are the same processed ingredients we've already discussed: white flour, sugar, high fructose corn syrup, and vegetable oils. The dressings they use are also typically made with vegetable oils. Most of the flavor that doesn't come from sugar is added with artificial flavors and colors. Now that you understand what can damage the liver, I want to bring your attention back to this graphic to put everything in perspective. Type 2 diabetes, which is strongly associated with fatty liver, is a condition that should not exist at all. It was almost unheard of hundreds of years ago, but today it's an epidemic caused by eating the kinds of foods discussed in this video. It's not even a true disease, it's more of an adaptation. By repeatedly feeding the body junk for decades, it eventually adapts to the abuse. This problem isn't limited to a few countries, it's a global issue. We are doing this to ourselves by adopting a sedentary lifestyle and eating non-foods. Number 10 is baked goods or pastries. This category includes donuts, muffins, cinnamon rolls, cookies, Pop-Tarts, cupcakes, the list goes on. These addictive, beloved foods offer nothing redeeming because they contain mostly the things we should avoid: white flour, sugar, and the oils we've already discussed. They also contain chemicals, artificial flavors, artificial colors, and preservatives. When I grew up, we still had these things, but they were typically homemade, and they weren't an everyday occurrence. That's the issue now. These treats are becoming staples. This trend is happening not just in a few places, but all around the world, driving the epidemics we're seeing. I was shocked to learn that 140 million people in the United States, more than a third of the population, regularly eat products like Pop-Tarts and related toaster foods. We need to recognize that none of the foods we discussed in this video are truly food, yet they are becoming staples in our diets, contributing to the epidemics we're facing. If you enjoyed this video, you're going to love the next one. If you want to master your health and truly understand how your body works, make sure to subscribe, hit that bell, and turn on all notifications so you never miss a life-saving video.